The focus of this model is on understanding the nature of politics and the relationship between the politics and business. After going through this lesson, you shall be able to explain the concept, nature, scope and dimension of political environment, aware of the importance of international political environment, analyze the implications of changing global political environment for business, be more alert to the evils of terrorism and measures to cope with happening in international business, events and policies. Politics is a feature of all societies and is therefore always part of the external environment of business. All of us are the products of the political environment around us. Managers and business executives are no exception. They must understand the working of the political system from time to time. Political factors are rooted in democratic functioning of various countries. In its functioning, elections and political parties become the core determinants of political environment. The form and structure of the government is a very simple and important and decisive factor for the business sector because they influence various aspects of not only domestic economy but have their ramifications in external sector of the economy as well. The political environment differs from country to country and business activity tends to grow and thrive then when a nation is politically stable. The concept of political environment. Politics has been defined in numerous different ways, but all highlight the function of conflict resolution in society. Broadly, politics refers to the processes by which a social group allocates the exercise of power and authority for the groups as a whole. Its scope is public life rather than particular organizations. Let us now explain the concept of political environment. The political environment includes all the laws, government agencies and groups that influence or limit the organizations and individuals within a society. In its widest sense, political environment includes the effect of pressure groups who seek to change the government policies. This includes the political system, the government policies and attitude towards the business community and the unionism. Moreover, ideologies followed by political parties have a great impact on business organizations and the operations. All these aspects have a bearing on the strategies adopted by the business firms. There are different political systems in the world. An open system of government is democratically elected by the population of a country. The fact that democratic governments have to seek re-election every few years has contributed towards a cyclical political environment. This periodical system of electing government is one of the major factors influencing the stability of the government and policies which in its turn affect the businesses and related activities to a great extent. The formation of governments may give a mixed signal of strength, confidence to various interest groups and investors. In this way, the political environment is one of the less predictable element in an organization business environment. Nature of political environment. The governments have their own form, structure, style and philosophy. Depending on the nature of the government at work, business has to organize its activity. Business is affected by the government policies, programs and legislations and as such business policy decisions have to be designed in the realm of the government's overall policy and the system environment. The following highlights the nature and the main constituents of the political environment. First, the ideologies followed by the governments. In most countries, mixed economy operates. This is an economic system where both the government and the private enterprise direct the economy. For business organizations, understanding shifts in dominant ideologies can be crucial to understanding the future nature of their business environment. In this context, role of the state versus the private sector in delivering goods and services becomes significant. However, government take their involvement by influencing various business activities in the areas of marketing, finance, management, environment and other issues. Second, the structure of government. Under a federal form of government, we tend to confine the authority in the central, state and local governments. In this way, the system of government and the structure of administration affect the business. Third, government legislations and regulations affecting business and marketing are very important part of the political environment. Government intervention in business activity all over the world is a rule rather than an exception. Regulations on pricing, hiring, production and environmental regulations will very likely influence the business decisions. Particularly in the field of international business, countries have entered into regional trading agreements. Such agreements are designed to facilitate trade through the establishment of a free trade area, custom unions or customs market. This eliminates the trade barriers between member countries while maintaining the trade barriers with non-member countries. In an era of globalization, the political environment in which many business operate is not confined to any particular political system of a country, because multinational corporations operate in more than one country. Fourth, political stability. Political stability is a key factor and businesses all over the world assign prime importance to this factor. Political instability carries a set of risks. Whenever the nation becomes politically unstable, the flow of the foreign capital is adversely affected. Political stability in a nation is read not only in terms of the physical events and happenings, but also in terms of the stability of the government machinery and policies in relation to the business. If policies and programs are stable, then business can plan its activities, otherwise it faces a tremendous amount of what is called non-market risk and uncertainties. Stable policies build up business confidence and help business planning. Fifth, bureaucracy or civil service. The government works through the bureaucracy. Bureaucrats have social status and power. They also possess personal knowledge of the rules. Bureaucracy enjoys tremendous power in the context of a system environment based on a host of controls and regulations. Policies once formulated have to be implemented, and for that we need political and bureaucratic will. The smooth working of bureaucracy is a great facilitator and provides confidence in doing business at ease. Sixth, pressure groups and lobbying. The political forces are parallel to the social environment. Lobbying is the practice and profession of influencing the governmental decisions carried out by agents who present the concerns of special interest to legislators and administrators. Lobbyists are activists usually paid by an interest group to promote their position to legislatures. Many groups having their vested interest consider lobbying an important activity and create pressure to try and protect their interest whenever there is a debate about some change in legislation or policy. The world of pressure group is highly diverse. Businesses can themselves act as a pressure group. Organizations that use lobbying are corporations, financial institutions, labor unions, professional associations, educational groups, medical interest, farm alliances, public interest and social issue groups, and the last one is the common cause. Seventh, role of media. The existence of media independent of government is a fundamental component of democracy, allowing the scrutiny and criticism of government and business. Editorials and investigative journalism play an important role in exposing the government and corporate scandals or bad practices. Commercial media organizations will respond to the market demand for critical view of business among readers and viewers. In this backdrop, it has become an important ingredient for businesses to manage their interaction with the media. Generally, both businesses and governments are able to influence this with the help of advertising and public relations, which facilitate the formation of pro-business media. Moreover, in today's environment, most of the business houses also tend to have ownership and good access to the media organizations. Eighth, public opinion. Public opinion is a very important aspect of the modern life. In his philosophy of right, G.W.F. Hegel has opined that public opinion deserves to be respected as well as despised. Public opinion is vital for the success of democracy. Therefore, in any governmental decisions, politicians have to take public opinion into account. However, it must be noted that public opinion becomes more important when it comes to the perceptions of things rather than the actual policy decisions. The role of public opinion in a democracy is ultimately decided by the result of the struggle between belief and fact. During the time of elections, vested interest groups make efforts to manipulate through the media to have public opinion in their favor. In this backdrop, public opinion may be rationally or irrationally formed or expressed. This may be characterized as subtle manipulation of the public opinion forming processes by interested groups. This is nothing but manipulation of public opinion through the process of corruption of facts by a powerful group which control the major public opinion forming agencies. Opinions on political matters are slowly formed. The common people have hardly any interest in the affairs of the state. Some agencies are needed to excite them. Ninth, other constituents. Besides, the political environment is a direct consequence of the political parties in power, which represents the popular opinion of the citizens of the country. The parties which do not command majority form the opposition. The strength of the opposition very often depends on whether or not the opposition parties are united or divided. The opposition can make constructive criticism of the government policies. However, it is very common to observe that politicians pledge to deal with the local concerns. The next is the importance of international political environment. Importance of political environment. It is obvious from above discussion that political environment affects business positively as well as negatively. Positive or negative impact will largely depend on the prevailing situation in a country. In the contemporary world, it is common belief that success in business in many ways largely depend on politics of the day. The rules that govern and regulate the manner in which international trade is conducted are enacted by the politicians. This being the operational framework, it is very critical to inculcate the good relations amongst the various stakeholders, business, politicians, both in power and in opposition, bureaucracy and media to facilitate success. In this way, the following factors highlight the importance of the political environment. First, government could change their rules and regulations and this could have an effect on business. Second, in international business, a lack of political stability in any country has an effect on its operations. In today's world, it is very essential to intelligently keep oneself constantly abreast of the international problems as business problems being influenced by the given political environment. Third is public opinion. In this context, it is important to remember the contribution of the public opinion formation agencies relating to the modern information technology. Fourth, lobbying and pressure groups generally exercise their political influence through links with the political parties. In order to secure maximum favor from the existing government, businesses create their own lobby and it is the strength of this lobby which partly decide whether the government adopts pro-business or anti-business measures. Fifth, both governments and businesses are increasingly realizing the influence of rising global middle class. Middle class status does not mean that an individual will automatically support democracy or clean government. The middle classes have been on the front line of opposition to abuses of power. The technologically empowered middle class has now become highly demanding of their politicians throughout the globe. The moral of this discussion is that without a clear understanding of dynamics of politics and the support and encouragement from the politicians, business cannot prosper. Given the dynamics of political environment, the business strategy depends on the prevailing political situation and this influences the policies taken by political forces in the country and abroad and what will be the impact of different political developments across the globe on the state of business. For the success of any business, it is essential to take into account the political environment Otherwise, the political forces may adversely impact the chances of the success by creating uncertainties and hurdles which may go against the business. Next is the implication of changing global political environment. The political environment of a country affects its individuals and businesses. A country's political environment appears to have a differential impact on foreign and domestic firms. To start this discussion, it is worthwhile to remember the words of George Orwell, who said, "In our age, there is no such thing as keeping out politics. All issues are political issues, and politics itself is a mass of lies, evasions, folly, hatred, and schizophrenia." Since the political environment is external to the management and therefore it continues to be one of the less predictable elements in business decision making. Let us look at some of these factors. Political decisions affect several interlinked factors which occur in many ways. For example, the economic environment, social and cultural environment, and the pace at which new technologies appear and are adopted. The political environment introduces risk for the business that may cause businesses to suffer a loss. Corruption remains a barrier to business in many countries. Given that in a democracy there will always be politicians and there will always be one of them who is involved in a scam. It does not matter which country businesses look at or when. Some companies may survive and prosper by bribing government officials. In a federation, the actions and policies of government at all levels, the local, state and the national, necessitate to deal with the impact of government policies internally and internationally. In the field of international business, the important point is that there exists diversity in cultures, ideologies and political systems in each country. Moreover, it is common knowledge that in almost all countries, politics and culture are closely related. The ideology of pluralism is considered favorable for international business. Democratic countries are well regarded in the eyes of the foreign investors because their capital and investment will be safe and generate better profits. It would not be out of place to mention that there is a need for keeping an eye on the political environment because of the following reasons. First, change in political environment can impact on the business strategy and operation in number of ways. Second, political stability affects the attractiveness of a particular national market. Third, government's legislations, rules and regulations directly affect the interactions of various stakeholders of business, firms, customers, suppliers and others. Fourth, very often government look at business as an important medium for social reform. Fifth, governments are liable for protecting the public interest at large. Sixth, governments are major consumers of goods and services. Seventh, the media, press, radio and television and increasingly the internet not only spreads awareness of political issues but also influences policy and decision making by setting the political agenda and influencing the public opinion. The political environment sometimes erects obstacles to the expansion and success of business enterprises. These obstacles include extensive business regulations and government market interventions, unexpected shift in the government policies, differential levels of access of firms and individuals to policymakers, and varying levels of the political corruption. The moral of this discussion is that businesses continue to face risk from various quarters. It is very important to foresee such warnings in business continuity. This necessitates proper identification of various risks and adopting the process of mitigating these risks. Foreign businesses are more engaged in importing, exporting and currency conversion that are most exposed to the government intervention and are likely to face greater scrutiny in the enforcement of a country's business regulation. This poses substantial constraint on the foreign firms. Corruption can increase the cost of doing business in a country and likely to deter foreign direct investment. The expectation of bribery of government officials and even the prevalence of informal grease payments causing holdups of business operations. Levels of corruption vary from country to country. The differential impact of the political environment on foreign and domestic firms has important implications for both the multinationals and the local enterprises. Policymakers should be aware of the fact that policy unpredictably and corruption in their domestic political environment appears to pose greater obstacle to businesses. Can business stay out of politics? From the above discussion, an interesting question comes to one's mind whether businesses are in a position to keep themselves detached from politics. In the process of globalization, business has become more powerful than government, and this power shift undermines the democracy. It is clear that corruption are powerful entities in the modern world and that their decisions have profound impact on how we live and the future of our societies. But one must keep in mind that political power, that is the capacity to make and enforce laws, still lies into the hand of government and can be used to regulate business behavior. And that in democracies the power is ultimately into the hands of the people as a whole. Democracy involves two broad processes or channels of influence on government: the electoral process and the representation of the group interest. Various pressure groups wants to influence the government, and these pressure groups provide a mechanism for individuals to have an ongoing influence in politics. The world of pressure groups is highly diverse. Business interests are more prominent, and business is able to exercise a disproportionate influence through the electoral process and interest group activity due to its control of key resources such as organization, knowledge and finance. Government need to manage the economy successfully, and to do so need to take heed of business interest and views. On the other hand, Lugar argues that business does have inordinate influence and that this influence is undesirable. In this view, business interest may often conflict with the common good. Therefore, business influence in policy making needs to be checked so that corporate interest can be balanced with and sometimes subordinated to those of the other groups. Paul Weatherly supports the view that businesses cannot remain aloof from politics, and he emphasized that political decisions and actions can have powerful effects in constraining or enabling business activity, and therefore business has strong interest in participating in the political process. In a democratic political system, it is legitimate for business to seek, like other groups in society, to influence government decisions in its own interest. Indeed, democracy can be defined in terms of everyone having a voice in political decision making, and everyone of course include business. It is in the nature of politics that the many voices will often express interest, values and demands that collide or conflict with each other. The interest of business may be opposed by other groups in society such as trade unions or consumer groups. For example, businesses may press the government to relax restrictions on Sunday trading, while government face demand from the trade unions to maintain existing limits and protections. Thus, Paul Weatherly has observed that politics can be seen as involving a play of power between groups, each seeking to win. But politics can also allow a process, dialogue, negotiation and compromise, or win-win. Either way, it is clear that businesses need to have an effective voice in political debate and ensure that its need and interest gain the attention of the government. Business is an actor in the political arena. Wiser counsels do prevail, though not often, in critical areas of the governance in a democracy. Upholding constitutional proprietaries must top priorities, as they alone will enable a proper framework for governance in the country. Next is the international business and threat of terrorism. Terrorism has in one form or another been a part of society throughout history. Terrorism increasingly poses risk to the international business. This has become more destructive and more relevant in recent years. Alexander et al. Have defined terrorism as the systematic threat or use of violence, often across national borders, to attain a political goal or communicate a political message through fear, coercion, or intimidation of non-combatant person or the general public. Terrorism entails unlawful act of violence committed for a wide variety of reasons, like for ransom, to overthrow a government, to gain release of imprisoned colleagues, to take revenge for real or imagined wrongs, and to punish non-believers of the terrorist religion. European Commission in 2001 has observed that terrorism holds important implications for businesses and international business in particular. Terrorists direct their attack against businesses far more than any other target. As regard exploring some theoretical hypotheses for understanding terrorism, Hill and Jain have observed that in Huntington thesis, global terrorism is a product of the tension between civilization and the clash of value systems and ideology. Others point to terrorism's roots in long-standing conflicts that seems to defy political resolutions, the Palestinians, Kashmir and Northern Ireland conflicts being obvious examples. It should also be noted that a substantial amount of terrorist activity in some part of the world, such as Colombia, has been interwoven with the illegal drug trade. As former US Secretary of State Colin Powell has maintained, terrorism represents one of the major threats to world peace and economic progress in the 21st century. Several key factors have contributed the way terrorists can operate today. Some of them are: first, due to urbanization, concentration of people at important places like government offices, businesses and industrial facilities. Second, media with rapid widespread global reporting bringing to the world the fear and ever-present possibility of a local attack. Third, terrorists using modern transport and communication systems. New on the horizon is the growing potential for cyber terrorism and cybercrime. Fourth, some new technique like suicide bombing has become most worrisome weapon of mass destruction. Impact of terrorism and international business. There are a number of ways in which business is prone to be affected by terrorism. Broadly, there may be classified as direct and indirect impact. Direct effects comprise the immediate business consequence of terrorism as experienced by a particular business entity. But in terms of the impact on business, indirect effects are the most common effect of terrorism. These includes the declines in consumer demand, unpredictable shift or interruptions in the value and supply chains, new policies, regulations and laws. Besides, there may be negative macroeconomic and weakening international relations that affect trade. According to Gary and Zincota, it is these indirect effects that pose the greatest potential threat to the activities of countless firms. Terrorism increases cost of doing business in the following way. First, increased security cost. Second, difficult and or costly to attract qualified personnel. Third, reputation damage. Fourth, material losses and impact on health and safety of staff. Fifth, opportunity cost and lost productivity. And sixth, other risk like the management cost including insurance. Organizations and individuals are affected by terrorist actions. Important among them are: first, managers who formulate plans to deal with terrorism. Second, the consumer behavior may be affected by terrorism. Third, government at various levels, national, state and local. And fourth is the public and semi-public authorities, for example, persons related to transport and communications, trade and professional associations, etc. Financing of terrorism. A more common form of terrorist financing is through protecting payments to parliamentaries, terrorist guerrilla forces or even state military unions. This often becomes a routine part of doing business in troubled zones and constitute terrorist financing. Therefore, the financial sector has become a major focus of the global anti-terrorism movement, as evidenced by the US and the European government's effort to freeze the assets of suspected Al-Qaeda supporters and other terrorist organizations. In reality, MNCs often have more economic power than many national governments. The World Bank has taken many initiatives to enhance security for the companies willing to invest in risky parts of the world. In countries with weak or no democratic structures and widespread human rights abuses, The World Bank is incorporating conflict prevention mechanism in its lending framework for agreements between multinational corporations and host governments. Globalization has both winners and losers. Managers in MNCs find themselves operating in areas of armed conflict, indigenous cultural disputes, epidemic disease, and other sources of social upheaval. This requires business professionals to be more security conscious and to undertake roles formerly reserved for diplomats, as promoting peace becomes an essential element of successful business operations. In a global economy, governments must make sure that legal incentive to good business behavior do not stop at the national borders. Summary. Let us now summarize what we have learnt in this module. Politics often determines where and how international business can take place. A nation's political policies influence the ways in which international business takes place within its borders. A number of ways the political climate of a country in which business operates is as important as the country's topography, its natural resources, and its meteorological climate. Many of the political forces with which business must cope with are not only ideological, but also there are a large number of other forces. These forces include nationalism, terrorism, traditional hostilities, unstable governments, international organizations, and government-owned business. International political environment consists of different political systems, political institutions, and governmental regulations in host countries. Political institutions and governmental regulations have more immediate bearing on the international business. The MNCs themselves can also be political force because some of these have budgets or sales larger than the GNP of some countries with which they negotiate. They operate in different countries with different political and legal conditions. If political environment is not good or is uncertain or unpredictable, then one does not have confidence to expand one's business there and would remain conscious to invest more.